Hey everyone, welcome back. David in History for the Ages here. So I thought I'd do something fun, another movie review. Gladiator 2 is out, and what I'm going to do is not review the movie in terms of is it a good movie, bad movie. I mean, it's obviously not as good as the first movie, but in terms of historical accuracy. So if you see it and you're wondering, did that really happen? What was it based on? I'm going to tell you kind of fact and fiction, and hopefully you can kind of enjoy it. It's a great way to learn history. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the movie, even if it's not historically accurate, but we'll go through a few of the key interesting points here. And we'll start with the characters. And I'll also start by saying this. Look, I love the first movie, right? The first Gladiator movie was great. It's one of my favorite movies. It was set, with the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius and his son Commodus, both real characters. But other than that, the first movie was a historical mess, right? It got a lot of things wrong. I have a movie review on that too, if you want to go and look at that on my channel as well. And so you could make a really good movie and it not be historically accurate. Now you have like the Napoleon movie, which was a historical mess and frankly not a very good movie. If you're looking for movies that are more historically accurate, think of something like Christopher Nolan, right? He makes more of an effort. Is it ever going to be perfect? No, but Oppenheimer I loved. So in this movie, we've got the characters, right? Kirkala and Gedem. They existed. They're real characters that they existed. Those are historically true that you had two co-emperors. In the movie, kind of it drags out a while between them, and there's this long rivalry and all that. In reality, Kirkala killed Geta the next year in 212 AD. So basically, he comes into power 211. They come in together, and 212 they die. This is, one of the things that is taking place is this is during what we sometimes historians call the crisis of the third century, where there is a chaotic time in Rome. That is for sure. See, with the whole first movie, you had Marcus Aurelius. He was the last of the emperors during what we call the quote unquote golden age of Rome. Things were going really well for a long time. Then you had his son Commodus, and things kind of just started to spiral down into what we call sometimes the crisis of the third century. So it was definitely a chaotic time, but in terms of these co-emperors, their role was definitely changed a bit from what we saw historically with them. Other characters were just really way off, right? So you have Lucius, who's of course like the main character, the gladiator, and all that in the movie. He died when he was 12. So yes, there was a real Lucius, but he died at the age of 12, so he never would have even been part of this whole gladiator fight and all of that. So that's just total make believe. Marcus, of course, the character played by Pedro Pascal, that guy never existed. I'm sorry. I think a lot of ladies, I think, went to watch this movie because they like Pedro Pascal. At least that's what my wife tells me. Definitely that guy didn't even exist. Macrinus, that guy's kind of interesting because he did exist, and he was more of a kind of a bureaucrat, a Praetorian prefect. At the time, he was not somebody like in the movies, this powerful arms dealer and this businessman involved in the Gladiator Games and all of those things. That's not realistic. He was a guy involved in politics and all of that, but not the way you see him in the movie. And of course, that was played by Denzel Washington. So just the way they portray him is not exactly accurate either. Then there's the kind of whole setting of the story, at least in the beginning, where you have this war against Numidia. And now this is the part, every so often I'm watching these movies. In the first movie, it was Gladiator, when I see Commodus killing his father, and his father saying he's going to change Rome into a Roman Republic again. I'm sitting there movie thinking, no way, that's never going to happen. And this was kind of the moment in this movie where, this whole thing is this is war against Numidia and all of that. Well, yeah, there was a war against Numidia. That happened during the Roman Republic. So if you actually are interested in it, this is actually a really good primary source, a man named Sallust. And he writes what's called the Jugurthan War. And this Jugurthan War is about this war with Numidia that the Romans fought back around 112 BC. So we're talking about 300 years roughly off. And so definitely, yes, there was a war. It's pretty important. It was just kind of a time when the Roman Republic had started to expand really well, but then they had this kind of challenging war in Numidia. Some historians talk about this as maybe being part of the decline of the Roman Republic, right? Sallust talks about how the Roman army lacked discipline during this time period. a few other interesting things. So there was this big war against Numidia, but it happened way earlier in the timeline. So that's a big part of the movie, but not something that would have really happened. Another interesting part is the role of women. So you have Lucilla. The problem again in the movie, she was killed much earlier. She was killed in 182 AD. And so the way they depict her in the movie, first of all, she wouldn't have been alive. There's that. But also, I think at this point, a little, they kind of, I would say, more influence than she probably really would have had. And the other thing, just women in general, like you never see women sitting in the front of the Colosseum during the Gladiator Games. They were all up there in the back, right? So that's not something you would see women having any sort of prominent role in these type of societies very often. I mean, Rome was a very patriarchal society, and so you probably wouldn't have seen that at all. Now, of course, one of the things most people are most interested about when they see a movie like Gladiator are the Gladiator games. And how right did they get that? Well, sorry, folks, there were no sharks. No one was riding rhinos. And the armor was, of course, completely off. I mean, if you were to look at primary sources that we have, whether it's mosaics, like I have a little mosaic image here, or written primary sources of the Gladiator games, their armor was not nearly as flamboyant as what you see in the movies. So that would have been a bit different than what you see. Yes, they had wild animals, and there was one account that they had like 5,000 animals were killed in a single day in the Gladiator games, but probably not rhinos. And if they did have rhinos, no one's riding a rhino. I don't even know if it's possible to ride a rhino. I have no idea. But none of that, and no sharks. Now I will tell you this: they did flood the Colosseum. One thing I do have is I have a video I made on the history of the Colosseum. And it's like 10 minutes and it goes through how they built it and what it was used for. And one of the things I talked about, and I made this video a while back before, Gladiator II, is that they were able to flood the Colosseum and they did use it for naval battles. So that's pretty cool. And it kind of shows the amazing technology and engineering that the Romans had. But in terms of, bringing sharks and all of that, didn't happen. I think I also remember seeing like trebuchets working during some of these battles, and of course they didn't have anything like that. So in terms of the battle scenes and the fighting and the costumes, all of that is just really highly exaggerated in the movie. And so, this is the thing with again any sort of Ridley Scott movie. He just takes a lot of poetic liberties in history with the movies. You could still make a fun movie. In terms of the movie itself, the music and the acting and all that, I'll leave that for other people to kind of critique. But in terms of historical accuracy, nah, this one didn't quite have much historical accuracy to it, just like the first movie. But the first movie was great. I loved it. I have a lot of other stuff. I have a whole playlist on other things on movies, like my favorite historical movies, favorite World War II movies. I'll leave some links in the description here. But I hope you enjoyed this little movie review, and thank you for watching. Please like, share, leave comments, all that good stuff. And we'll see if they make any other fun movies in the near future. Everyone have a great day. Thank you for watching.